Everyone, thank you for joining us. This is Rick Murphy with AllNet. Today we've got Matt Sundberg, who's going to be reviewing the Pro Control items. He's going to go over the whole line of product, and then he's going to program a system for us on the screen at the end of the presentation. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Matt Sundberg from Pro Control.
All right, thank you very much. Hopefully everyone can hear me just fine. Again, my name is Matt Sundberg. A little bit about me. I've been with Pro Control for just a little under 7 years now. I started in tech support, went up to the head of tech support lead. Now I'm product specialist, and now I do a little bit on the RTI side as well. So I kind of do many parts of whether it's the product development itself, whether it's programming, it's software, it's kind of hardware design. I kind of have a little bit of feed into everything, so I have a very wide range of things that I can do for you guys. Today, we're going to talk about the Pro Control remotes. We're going to talk about the hardware. We're going to talk about some of the differences between the hardware, whether it's the R or the Z. We're going to talk about a bunch of the accessories that we have that do a little bit of both. And then we're going to get into, at the very end, a little bit of the programming, just to kind of give you guys an idea of just a little sneak peek of all the software that we can do, some of the cool tricks that we have that other people don't, and just kind of how fast and efficient it really is just to program these devices. So, getting into Pro Control right off, who are we, what are we, how did we come about? So, Pro Control Studio is our programming software. It was spun off from RTI about 6 years ago. We were brought in to kind of compete with the lower end URC, kind of the Logitech crowd. We were kind of brought in just to kind of separate the Pro Control from RTI. RTI is a much larger company. They have a lot more engineering, a lot more background, and they have a lot more products, whether it's in walls and remotes and so forth. But that's kind of what brought us around. And because we started brand new, we didn't have any legacy devices to worry about. We didn't have to worry about creating a software that we had to worry about all these old devices and old ways of doing things. We could kind of start from scratch, start completely fresh, brand new. What we did was kind of pick and choose technology from RTI that they've learned over the past 25 years. This is actually our 25th anniversary coming up this fall. We kind of just picked all the things that we wanted, whether it was the reliable RF, how we'd handle the communication, and it was kind of the software pieces that we liked within that, and we kind of brought that down into a more reasonable price point, easier to program, and more template-based software than what you'd be used to on the RTI side of things. Now that line just kind of grays depending on where you're going, and we'll talk about the difference between the two and kind of where they fit. But the majority of today's kind of focus on the hardware and where our two product lines kind of fit into the mix. One of the major things that people seem to gravitate towards when they talk about Pro Control is the remote itself. To really have the remote in your hands, very, very sleek, very nice, kind of have that a more modern, elegant look to it itself. And because we have the ability to have this RTI, this much more larger resource of all these devices available to us, we can then bring that down and we kind of stripped it down. Honestly, it's kind of a stripped down version of the RTI software. And that allows us to just pick and choose the pieces that we want, the pieces that we can support, and kind of build this out into a very, very quick, easy interface that we can have for our installers to be, a 15, 20-minute, 30-minute install done with our programming software. One of the things I really like to point out is that we are a true RF processor. Not only do we store commands on the processor, we also store commands on the remote, and that allows us to send a single trigger command from the remote to the processor, and then the processor will send its commands out from there. So that's kind of, at this price point, you're really not seeing it. You're seeing RF to IR converters where it's sending every command. Not only is that hard on battery life, it's also hard on reliability, because if you miss one command, everything's kind of borked up. But just something that we'd really like to point out with the Pro Control. We are also still fully customizable, whether it's the on-screen with the remote, whether it's the iOS devices, whether it's your macros. Everything you have, everything you can do is all still customizable. Even though we are template-based, and when you add a TV, you add a Blu-ray, it creates a template page that's completely built out for you. You can completely delete that, remove everything on the screen, add your own buttons, macros, whatever you want. So we still have that fully customizable capability. If you want to spend the time, or if you have the resources available to you to spend the time to make graphics and buttons however you wish, you certainly can. Or you need to get in quick and easy, use our full featured templates, and kind of build from there. So that just makes it a little bit easier. Our 3 forms of communication that we use are IR, whether it's direct from the remote, just line of sight, no processor, nothing fancy. If we have our one-way, which is our 433, and then we have our two-way, which is our 2.4 gigahertz Zigbee for control and feedback. You're getting the information on the screen of the remote itself. And of course, kind of the fourth one, which is kind of what we tie in with other things, is the IP-based, whether it's to the iPad, whether it's to a relay device or an expansion device, to Z-Wave, to receivers. We do IP-based programming and control as well. But we'll touch on that a little bit later with the Pro Panel app. So again, like we said, we brought in RTI pieces, we picked and choose, and we built this software completely from scratch. There's nothing to worry about for legacy devices. And that allowed us to do some really crazy things with the graphics, resizable graphics, resizable images, very point-click, graphic-based, kind of what you see is what you get programming. There's no menus to drill down. It's very in-your-face kind of programming. And that makes it fairly intuitive, especially if you've never done programming before. I will say it's a little bit different than what you've done other programming interfaces. It may be a little bit strange or bizarre, but once you kind of see our methodology, you kind of say, okay, yeah, this is very, very quick, very, very fast to kind of move around within the software itself. So we'll get into that at the very end. So here is our product lineup. We have our processors on the left, 2 processors that we have to choose from. We have the Pro Panel, IPro 8, and a whole bunch of accessories kind of in the middle here that we'll talk about. And on the far right-hand side is our Pro Control remotes, our Pro 24R and Pro 24Z. When we talk about the R or Z, these are 2 different series. We have the R series on the left and the Z series on the right. The R series is typically using IR, whether it's through the remote line of sight or through the processor via RF out of the processor IR, or using the Pro Panel app one way to the processor, then the processor sends IR out from there. Just remember that when you're dealing with the R series, so anything that has a .R at the end, it has to be controlled IR only at the end of the day. So whether we send RF to the processor, it still has to send IR out from the processor. Whether we're sending IP from the iPad to the processor still sends IR out from there. So remember, R series, at the end of the day, the device that you're controlling, you're only controlling it using IR. The Z series is where you start getting into serial control, IP control, two-way information. We're getting that pulling the information from a receiver, from lighting, from HVAC, climate, weather. You're getting that information presented not only to the device, but presented back to the remote in front of you. So a little more flexibility. You also have the ability to expand, and you can do multiple zones. Typically, you're going to be doing the Z series when you're doing multiple rooms, just because we do have the ability to expand and add more remotes and so forth. The R series, there's no really ability to expand the RF range between the remote and processor. So just keep in mind that if you're worried about range, which is typically 90 feet line of sight, if you're ever worried about range, go to the Z series because we do have the ability to expand. Now, if you're not using a remote and you're just using the iOS app, which is both processors is capable of doing, then obviously you need to make sure you have Wi-Fi connection rather than just using the RF that's built in to the R or the Z. So let's tear into these a little bit more. So here is the Pro 24R remote. The Pro 24 denotes the 2.4 color touchscreen, and the R denotes, of course, the one-way communication. Fully customizable IR learning is built into the remote, so if you have a Pro 24R remote or the Pro 24Z, they both have IR learning built in. You can pair this with a processor to get that RF capability, so stuff the Prolink R processor in a rack somewhere, so you don't have to worry about line of sight anymore, and much more reliable. And the Pro 24R dock, just to let you know, does not come with a charging dock. It just charges micro USB, like most Android phones these days have the micro USB charger, but the dock is optional. Of course, you can pair that with the Prolink R processor. It gives you the RF capabilities. Like I said, throw that in a cabinet. It does also offer IP control from our iOS devices. Now, this is not two-way. Again, the Prolink.R, one-way IR only. So we can send one-way packets to the processor that will then trigger the processor to run a macro and send IR out from there. But just remember, Prolink R, IR only. Some features of the Prolink R: there are 4 routable and addressable IR ports. So not only can you adjust the port itself, which does support up to 4 non-lighted emitters, or approximately 3 lighted ones, the feedback emitters, either or. Just remember that if you do add 2 or 3 more emitters to a port, they're not going to be able to address those individual ports. Only the ports themselves are addressable. So theoretically, you could put up to 16 emitters on the processor, so don't let that bother you as far as power. They are very high current, and you can adjust each one. There's a little hole above each of the ports. So very powerful ports on those guys. There's also a sense-in jack, which is right next to it, based on RJ45. And what that allows us to do is test voltage. So let's say we have a cable box or a TV that doesn't have a discrete power on, power off. We can actually use like a USB, tie that onto an RJ45, and then we can actually test the voltage against that. So we can perform some if-then-else logic. So, if the TV is already on, obviously don't send the power toggle. Or if we want to turn off the TV, we can say, yeah, send the power toggle command. We also have the Ethernet jack. This really serves 2 purposes. One, for the iOS app, for the one-way commands, then IR out from the processor. And then 2, for downloading. So if this Prolink R processor is sitting back in a rack, and because it does store its own macros locally on the processor, we have to download programming to it. Now, if it's stuffed back somewhere, obviously you don't want to get up, run back, connect USB, download, run back out front, test. This just allows you to, when you are on the same network as the processor, we can just download to it over the network. And it is a lot faster to download as well, although you're looking at 30 seconds down to 10 seconds. So you save a little bit of time, but not really. Of course, next to that, we also have the USB port. Same port that's on the processor is on the remote as well, so you can use the same USB cable. And then the power, which is just 12 volt, 1 amp wall wart on that guy. Here is a typical line diagram, which you can see. Power supply, we'll throw a router in there, TV on a port, music player, receiver. Then we have on the lower right-hand corner a connecting block that just uses IR. You can plug that in. It's a heavy-duty metal device that you can mount on a wall. You can use that, or you can just wire things in parallel. Either or, doesn't matter. Generally, I say use some sort of a connecting block because emitter wires are just not fun to try to find polarity on. And they're terrible to throw some B connectors on, but it just makes life a little bit easier. Stepping into the Pro 24.Z, this is the step-up piece. The remotes are almost exactly the same. They use the same battery. They use the same charging cable. They use the same dock between the two. The big difference, if you're just physically looking at the remote, the big difference is the 5-way joystick located between the volume and the channel buttons on the remote itself. And believe me, when you are first programming these, the very first thing you want to do when you add a Pro 24 remote or add a Pro 24Z or R, make sure you're programming for the correct one. You'll do it at least once. You'll add the Pro 24Z when you should have added the Pro 24R. There's no way to convert because they are vastly different between the two. So just keep in mind when you are programming, make sure the .z, .r, make sure you're programming for the correct one. 24Z also has IR learning built into it, just like the 24R. Just want to make sure you guys know that one. Of course, we use the Zigbee for communication. It's about the same between the 433 that we use on the R and the 2.4 gigahertz Zigbee on the Z. The range is about the same. Typically, different frequencies either like to bounce or they like to absorb, either or. But generally, we say 90 to 80 feet. We also have the ability to expand on the Z, and I'll show you that with kind of our little repeaters that we have. Of course, if you do step up to the Z, you're more than likely going to want to add the Prolink Z processor, because this is what kind of brings everything together as far as the additional features that we have on the Z side. So this gives you IP control, two-way serial ports. This gives you the ability to add IP-based servers, information, cameras, weather, HVAC, lighting control, shades, just much more flexible, much more reliable. And it is a little bit faster as far as control-wise, mainly because the processor speed gets bumped up quite a bit just to handle the IP-based control, but it is just a much larger step-up piece to get into for programming. As far as hardware, we add 2 more routable IR ports to this processor, so 6 ports possible. And if you also see, there's some more RJ45 jacks on the face of the unit. So we have the same Ethernet port, we have the same sense in, so we can sense voltage and test voltage, and then we have 2 serial RS-232 ports. And those guys, they do come with a little adapter, so you can use just a straight through Ethernet cable, plug that right into the processor, and then plug the adapter. It's a RJ45 to DB9, and it does come with 2 of those, so you can connect that. Of course, if you've done serial before, you probably always had some Jenner changers or null modems in there as well to connect it to the device itself. Typically, we see that with projectors, not so much receivers, but depends on what you're working with. Same USB port, same power, same 12 volts, 1 amp. The Prolink Z, we overrate our power supplies. A Prolink Z maybe pulls 350 milliamps on a bad day. The R, you're probably looking at 150, so you can actually use that voltage for other things if you wish, but 12 volts, 1 amp. Here's another typical line diagram where you're doing a receiver with serial, a router, Ethernet. Most everything these days is going IP-based, so serials, but it's still there, so you don't have another failure point to worry about. You can just do serial. Of course, John, all the IR ports that we have available to us as well. So those are the 2 main product lines, the R series and the Z series. Just remember, R, IR control at the end of the day. Z, you're talking about IR, IP, RS-232, and the ability to expand to other rooms. Now, on top of all this, the R and the Z, pretty simple. The R goes with the R, Z goes with the Z. We have a whole bunch of accessories that kind of float around in the middle. They can kind of do either or. Some can do the Z, some can do the R, some can do both. And we'll kind of run through these and just kind of help you install and set up and give you a lot more flexibility as far as not only price point, features, and just kind of customization that you can do with all these different devices. The very first thing is the ProPanel iOS app. I will say that we are only available on iOS, no Android at this time. I know I'm an Android guy. I don't get it on the Pro Control side, but at this time, and I don't know if we're ever going to add Android capability because we are template-based, but just to let you know, we are only iOS at this time. The ProPanel app can be tied to either processor, whether it's the Prolink R or Prolink Z for the 2-way. And the license, there is a license feed to activate this, and one thing to note is that the license is tied to the processor, not the individual iOS device. So at any time, if the customer gets a new iOS device, you need to swap something out, or if you're just testing for your purposes when you're on site, you can fire it up on your device, test it, run around, wherever you need to do. Then to release the license, all you have to do is power cycle the processor and then reconfigure the app on the new device. It takes all of 20 seconds to download and reconfigure. So just remember, it's never tied to the app. The app is always free, downloaded on the App Store, but the license is activated and installed on the processor. We have the IPro 8. This is a companion remote. People will typically add these in with an app. The app is great. People love it. It's very handy, very nice to have. You almost always have your cell phone with you, except for that time that you don't, or the time that the battery is dead, or the time that the kid walks off with it. It happens. Completely understand. Or some people just want the tactile feel of buttons for channel surfing, volume, input, running your DVD. You don't have to have a bright screen. And this is where the IPro 8 fits. It kind of just no frills, works just fine, runs 4 AAA batteries on the bottom of the remote, battery life between 2 and 3 years. And this remote does work with either processor. It does have a dual RF board in it. So it's 433 for the Prolink R or 2.4 gigahertz for the Prolink Z. So either or. This also has a unique feature because all the programming is stored on the processor for the IPro 8 remote. We have the ability to sync back and forth. So if I take my phone, I hit Blu-ray player, turns on the TV, turns on the receiver, sets my zone source, starts playing the movie. If I then put my phone down and pick up the IPro 8 remote, we can then mirror that. So as soon as I hit Blu-ray, the IPro 8 says, okay, hey, I'm on the Blu-ray player page. I'm now going to make all my buttons associate with the Blu-ray player. Same thing for the TV, Apple TV, Roku's, media players, cable boxes. However you wish to program that, you can always mirror it with the app itself. One thing I will mention is that the IPro 8 does not have any local IR. It is an RF-only remote. So don't think you can just throw this simple remote just with a processor. You certainly can. You don't have to use the app. You can just pair the IPro 8 with a processor. But just note the IPro 8 has to be tied to a processor. Prolink R, Prolink Z. There's no local IR. And because there's no local IR, there's no IR learning built into the IPro 8 as well. So just keep in mind there's no window, no IR. Nothing to do with IR on the IPro 8 locally unless you pair it with a processor. Even if you don't use it as a kind of a syncing remote with the app, use it as a sacrificial remote for the kids' room or somewhere that you think you might leave it outside occasionally and you might kind of ruin it. So you don't have to worry about your nice colored touchscreen remote. But you can use this one to maybe pound some nails later in the afternoon. Remember I was talking about the range. The R, we don't really have the ability to extend the range. On the Prolink Z, we do. And that's with this device, the Pro.RFZ. And this is basically you could say it's a repeater of sorts. And this will just add multiple devices. You just kind of spread them out, much like you would Wi-Fi, if you were using a Wi-Fi repeater. And this just repeats the signal. You send it from the remote, spits it back out, gives it more juice, and just keeps sending it right down the line. You can do up to 4 of these range extenders in a row. So by nature, Zigbee will only hop 5 times, and that's just in a line. So obviously you could do, for example, if you had a processor in the basement, you could throw an RFZ on the first floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, and that's it. That's all the farther you could go up. But you could also go down. So if you had, basement 1, basement 2, basement 3. So it's not just 4 range extenders, it's 4 range extenders of how far things will hop. So just kind of keep that in mind. And that is only for the remote. So obviously if you have the ProPanel app and you're on the local network through Wi-Fi, you don't have to have the ProRFZ. And some people will just navigate with just the app and a processor. So even no remotes whatsoever. So lots of options for programming and laying out your system. We also have the Pro Relay 4. This is just a heavy-duty device. Do some garage doors. Me personally, I use it for the garage door. There's also shades. You know, some of the older shades are just dry contacts. A TV lift, a motorized screen, things of that nature. I believe they're 5 amp dry contacts, normally open, normally closed. You can do either or. It is PoE, so if you just have an Ethernet port and a PoE injector or a PoE switch, you can just power it that way, or you can just power it same 12 volt 1 amp power supply as well. You can also just do direct IR in. So if you are running a Prolink R processor, and of course there's no IP control, but we can send IR out, you can pair that with our Pro Relay 4 as well. It's just a heavy-duty device to have around, just very flexible. This is actually very popular with some other control systems just because of its price, and it works pretty well. So we actually sell this outside of the Pro Control world as well, just because some other control systems don't have a reliable relay available to them. So they're more than welcome to come to our side of the pond. Here's that connecting block I was talking about. Again, you can do up to 4 emitters per port. You can wire them in parallel, B connectors, whatever you want to do. Or you can just pick up this guy. It makes life so much easier. You don't have to worry about trying to find polarity on the emitters if that's kind of you're running. Plug it in, screw it to the wall, away you go. No one having to mess with that. Here's the Pro 24 dock. Here's the Pro 24.R remote sitting in it. It's a very slick device. You can put it in a drawer. The remote just kind of slides right into it. Nothing fancy. You can pick it up at any angle. Keep your remote fully charged. The Pro 24 dock is optional on the R, just because the R battery life lasts so much longer. The R will typically run between, we usually say 7 to 14 days on the R. Of course, that really varies if you're a button masher, so we're quite conservative with those numbers. The Z, you're looking at about 7 to 10 days max on the Z, just because it's in constant two-way communication with the processor. So the Z does come with a dock standard. It's just something you need to have just because the battery life is going to be that much shorter. The R, it's kind of optional. The majority of people will typically charge it twice a month, and that's usually good enough for them. If you have someone who's channel surfing all the time, yeah, probably once a week on the R. But that's just the difference between the two. We also have our own brand of emitters, the Pro IRE.1. We're not picky. If you have a specific emitter that you like, I get it. Use the designer series, use the RTI Versa mouses, whichever emitters you like to use. You can use ours. They're very handy. It's the same 3.5 millimeter mono plug, whatever you want to do. These are actually pretty slick just because they're all blacked out. They're non-feedback emitters, and they're pretty low current draw, so you can stuff a lot of these on a port. And then what's new and what just came out from us was our own ZWave interface. Of course, this is only for the Z series, so nothing on the R, because this is IP based. This just resides on the network. We send IP commands to this, and then this goes out and talks to all of our ZWave devices. Currently, and for a while, we've done ZWave through the Leviton VR COP-1LW serial interface. We've also done Vera devices, Vera Lite, Vera 3. I think there's a Vera Green or something like that way back in the day. I think they're on Vera Edge now. They keep renaming them and kind of respinning them. But we have this device. The main difference between the other ZWave interfaces that we have and the one we have now that we use internally with the Pro.ZWave is that you no longer have to program things twice. So when you first set up your ZWave, you enter in all your devices you associate with them, you name them. When you're done with the ZWave programming and you close it, that automatically imports into Pro Control Studio. All the naming conventions, all the programming, it's all saved into one place. So you're just saving time, especially if you have a larger install on the ZWave side. where you're doing, 30 devices, 40 devices on the ZWave side, you don't have to go back into your software and kind of rename your things, or you kind of print off like a sheet that just kind of shows you all the numbers on the node numbers and what they're associated with. You don't have to have that. It's all one self-contained unit. Just makes life a little bit easier. And I want to say that it is pretty quick. As far as programming and setting up, it's pretty nice. But as far as how quick it responds and how fast it sends commands out, is probably right up there with the best. And this also is a ZWave Plus device. So if you have any future devices or you're worried about the new stuff that's coming out, this is certified as a ZWave Plus device. So that's kind of where we tie everything together as far as hardware, and what brings it all into one ecosystem is our software. This is kind of where we made our claim to fame on the RTI side, is with our software. And this is just kind of a newer version, newer rendition of that. Again, we don't have to worry about old devices. Very point-click. What you see is what you get. And it ties everything into one piece. Pro Control Studio, just kind of briefly talking about it, you can program whatever you want graphics-wise. We accept anything. PNG, JPEG, GIF, TIFF, whatever you want graphics-wise. And you're going to find a lot of third-party stuff floating around on the RTI side, the Pro Control forums. Basically anything that you can scour from the internet, you can certainly put on, not a problem whatsoever. And our graphics are all resizable. So you don't have to worry about size, just make sure it's really big. We will always have the ability to shrink an image down smaller, but keep in mind that if the graphic is 20 pixels and just tiny like a little icon, we're not going to blow that up for you because that's just going to look terrible. It's going to be all pixelated. So just keep in mind, if you ever do find any graphics, just find the largest ones that you can so that we can import those into our software and kind of use them wherever you see fit. So always make graphics smaller. We can't make them bigger. But our templates are quite full-featured. So this is kind of just a wrap-up. We've gone through the hardware. I've kind of showed you a brief introduction to the programming software. And then here's kind of the benefits or the end game to kind of get away from Pro Control, is that we're only sold through distribution. You're not going to find us online. We have enough Google trackers and ad trackers to keep track of that stuff. Of course, we can't stop people from selling used stuff on the internet. No online sales, no pricing online. Programmable is not available to end users. This is not a user programmable device. It will never be that way. To become a dealer, to sign up, we do ask that you sign up on our website, procontrol.com/register, or you can just hit the register link in the top right-hand corner. Once you do that, we verify through your distributor that you are who you say you are, that you actually can buy through distribution. And once your account's approved, you get access to software. There's training videos. You can listen to me ramble on training videos. We also have some training videos from others. But for the most part, that kind of opens up the whole Pro Control ecosphere for you. There is a 1-year direct replacement warranty on all Pro Control devices, minus the battery, because typically when the battery fails, it's going to fail almost immediately when they are bad. We don't see much of that, though, honestly. But outside of that, we kind of just deal as case-by-case basis. So if it's under a year, talk to your distributor. They'll work with you on that. If it's over a year, case-by-case, just contact us directly, and we'll see what we can do available for you. Our contact information, Mike Everett, he's now the VP of Global Sales for Pro Control and RTI. He was just our general manager 4 years ago. Since then, he's kind of moved up through the ranks. Sarah Miller in service, she kind of runs the whole boat over there. She has a few people underneath her now. She runs RMAs, purchase order. If you need parts, you can certainly give her a ring. Tech support, me at the bottom. You can shoot me questions. You can shoot me programming guides. Just keep in mind that I am out about 50% of the time. So if I don't get to you right away, or if you need something answered right away, just give us a call onto our tech support, or shoot our support@procontrol.com for an email, and they'll get you straightened out right away as well. So All right, Pro Control Studio. This is a self-contained file. When you download Pro Control Studio from our website, you have everything. You have the latest firmware. You have the latest IR codes. You have the latest two-way drivers. You have the latest RS-232 codes. You download one. It's like, I think we're up to 74 megabytes now, so it's not massive. You download that. We typically do a release of Pro Control Studio about once a quarter. Depending on if there's something big, we'll come out, we'll do a push and do an update. But about once a quarter, we update the software that refreshes everything, new firmware, new IR codes, do everything that we needed to update. And it's all one self-contained unit. So there's no multiple programs for different remotes, no multiple programs for our accessories. Everything is programmed in one programming suite. If you ever have a question about what version you're running of Pro Control Studio, or if you want to check for updates, you can always go to Help at the top here, go down to Check for Updates. Hold on, I got to scoot this over. And it'll tell you we're up to date, tell you the latest build number and the version number, and it'll tell you. Also, when you the very first time you install it, it's going to ask you if it wants to check for updates occasionally when you fire up Pro Control Studio, and that will just ping our server and see if there's a new version available, and it'll just let you know. Or you can disable that, either or. So let's get started with a brand new system file, Pro Control Studio. We're going to program a Pro 24R. We'll throw a Prolink R in there, some TV, maybe a receiver, maybe satellite TV, maybe Apple TV. We'll just throw some random devices in there, however I feel today, and just give you an idea of how easy this does program. And then, depending on time, I'll show you how much you can customize it as well. So the very first thing you want to do in Pro Control Land is go ahead and add a Pro 24R remote. Remember, Pro 24Z, Pro 24R, big difference. Make sure you program for the right one. So I'll add the Pro 24R. I'll name this whatever I want. This isn't mainly for your housekeeping. If you have multiple remotes in the residence, just keep them separate. Maybe you'll call one living room remote and one master bedroom remote. The customer will never see that side of it, so just kind of keep that in mind. You can name it however you wish, but keep it PG. I'm going to add the Prolink R processor. Add that into our system file as well. And we'll just leave that. So I'm not going to add any more remotes. I'm not going to add any iPhones or iPro 8s. We'll just leave it at this. Pretty simple. Now when I select the remote, on the very far right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see a property and values column for the device I have selected. You'll see the remote has some options like a tilt switch, some beepers, some backlight timing. You can change these however you wish. Change the backlight timeout to 5 seconds, or the backlight level, just like on your screen. You change the brightness of that. You can adjust that as well. But one thing that's very important I want to touch on is on the processor itself. When you select the processor, very top, system zone code and channel. This is how you change between multiple systems. So let's say you have 2 separate Prolink Z or 2 separate Prolink R processors in the house. You'll want to make sure that not only are those on a separate channel, so you don't get any RF interference, but also on a separate system zone code, so that there's no way that they can even communicate with each other to cause interference. So very first thing I do is always put some random numbers in here. Throw, 42, and then throw, channel 10. The channels are, there's no one that's better than the other, like an access point, 1612, 1611, whatever you want to do. There's no difference. It's FM modulated. You can do whatever you want for the channels. 6 is not better than 13 by any means. But just throw a random number in there. That way, just in case the neighbor gets a Pro Control system as well, and somehow you also left it on the default 0 and they left it on the default channel 1, you could cause problems, especially in tight neighborhoods or apartments, condos, where the possibility of having another system is a lot higher. This at least kind of blocks that out and gives you less of a chance, can't go that high, less of a chance of any type of interference. So always do that in a system file. And while I'm here, before I go too far into my system, I'm going to hit save. Always a good idea to save. Save your system files. Laptops crash, batteries go dead, you're not paying attention, you actually hit the wrong button, things close. Always save your system file. This is what keeps everything sane, keeps you safe. Although it's not very difficult or slow to program these system files, saving 10-15 minutes here or there definitely will make life a little bit easier. There's also a whole bunch of settings on the R. There's time settings, there's clock settings, there's external remote access. We won't get into that, but they're pretty self-explanatory. So what I'll get into now is actually adding devices. So I'm going to go under Controlled Devices. I'm going to add my infrared device, and let's start with a TV. Let's do a Samsung TV. And when I search our IR database, I'm going to keep the searches very, very broad. So I'm not looking for a specific model number, although sometimes I will, but generally the most big manufacturers, they don't change their IR codes every year, every month, so forth. So you can just search very, very, very broad. So here I'm just going to type in Sam TV, and you'll see there's, at the very bottom here, there's HLS series, some really old stuff, and then Samsung TV, most models. Bingo. It's the only other option I have. It's going to ask me if I want to add a TV page. Some people will, some people won't, especially with the smart TV. I'll call it a smart TV page and call her good. And I'm just going to go through and keep adding my IR devices. Let's add a Sony Blu-ray. Oops. Sony Blu-ray, you'll see a couple models listed. BDP, SX, CX series, a couple different changers in there. But this is just a pretty generic model. Sony Blu-ray, all models. You'll kind of see a preview of the template there. You can name it whatever you wish at the top. And I'll just keep chugging through. Let's add a receiver. Let's do Yamaha main. Looking for main zone. Here's main zone, whole bunch of models. Select that in. This one gives me a couple different pages I can choose. I can do internet radio. I can do satellite radio. This example, I'll just probably do a tuner and call it good. You can name this whatever you want. Help if I can spell. Press OK. And let's do maybe a set-top box. Xfinity X1 cable box. Everyone's pretty familiar with that guy. And maybe one more. Let's do, I don't know, Apple TV. Apple TV, all models. There we go. Media Manager. I'm going to name this Apple TV. Press OK. There we go. We got our 5 IR devices. We can add pages or not. Some people add pages, especially like the TV. We might not add it. But once I've added all these devices in, now we actually want to get into the editor and see what the auto programming has done for us, how much it's actually built out and created for us in the system file. So if you go up on top, you can click the remote and hit edit. You can double click. You can right click and hit edit. About 3 ways to get where you want to go. And this will pull up the editor for us. Very first thing I'm going to do, since my monitors are pretty decent size, I'm going to want to zoom in on this, especially for you guys. Get that screen a little bit bigger. And here we have the programming interface. This is where you actually get into the macros and start programming your devices. On the far left-hand side, we have a picture of the remote, and it shows all the hard buttons that are associated with it. On the very center, we have what our actual screen of the remote will look like. Obviously not this big, but much smaller, down to 2.4 inches. And then on the far top right of our screen, we have 3 very important tabs. We have Properties, Macro, and Images. And this is where we kind of do all of our programming, do all of our setup and everything is just kind of built right into these devices. So depending on what I select on the screen will determine what you see on those top 3 tabs on the top right-hand corner. So if I select a button, and I'm just clicking it on the home screen here, the top right-hand corner, you'll see all these properties and attributes for this button that I have selected. So this is kind of the properties are kind of the look and feel of whatever I have selected. Now, if I go to the left-hand side and I choose a hard button, obviously those properties are pretty stripped down. I can't change what the channel down button looks like. It's built into the remote. We don't have the technology yet to do something like that. But when I actually choose the screen button, you can see all the properties available. There's button text. You can change this from radio. I'll type in tuner. You can change the text color to something red. And usually I make these pretty awful. I'm not a designer. I'm just a nerd. We'll make it look however you want. Change the text, change the color. You can change how it's aligned, center, left. There's all sorts of formatting options you can do. I won't get too much into that. But what we really want to get into is the macro tab. This is where the fun or the magic happens. Depends on the day you're having. Sometimes we all understand how that works. But everything you see here, whether it's the hard buttons on the remote, it's the kind of soft screen, the touch screen that you're working with, everything has a macro associated with it. So when you select that button, you select that image, everything on the screen has a macro. Even if it's on the far left-hand side here, I select the mute button, you'll see this mute button is for the Yamaha receiver mute toggle, and it has a macro, and everything's a macro in Pro Control land. So if I select let's grab Blu-ray for example. I hit the Blu-ray button. I look over in the top right-hand corner. It says change to page Blu-ray player. It's then going to send a command to the processor. And this is everything it's going to do for us. It's going to turn the Blu-ray on. It's going to turn the smart TV on. It's going to turn the receiver on. It's going to wait for 1 second. And then it's going to go to input BD DVD. Now, this is just going to guess. Obviously, it's not going to be right every time, and you probably want to throw an HDMI input for your TV just in case someone's been screwing around with it. But for the most part, it's going to be fairly close. Now, if you need to change anything in this macro window for this Blu-ray button, you can hit the red delete up above. So let's say it's not input BD DVD. I'll hit the red delete, and then I'll hit the green add. And this will pull up. Let me scoot this down here. Get a little better idea what's going on here. This is the add macro step window. So these are all the commands back from where that devices page, we added all those devices. These are all the commands that are available to us. There's some generic ones at the top here. Those like delay, button pause, repeat steps, toggle IR code. If you ever have the terrible chance of running into toggle IR codes there, that command is. But if you go under devices, here you'll see all the devices that we added. In this example, we're looking for the receiver. Maybe we want input HDMI 2 or something. So go down to inputs. Everything's alphabetical order. HDMI 2. I'll double click that to add it to the right. Or you can drag and drop and kind of scoot these around. There's no real rhyme or reason. You can put it wherever you want, just however you want to build out your macro. If you add too many, no problem. Just hit delete, and you can adjust it from there. Smart TV, this probably needs to be on input 1. Even though it's probably never going to change from HDMI 1, it's just a good idea to throw that in there. I'll scoot that at the bottom to give it some more time. And there we go. There's our Blu-ray command that's all built out for us. If you need any other commands or buttons, you can go whichever you want. Maybe we'll throw the play in there as well. So not only will the Blu-ray player power on, but it's also going to press play for me when it first powers up. And then you can just kind of build these out however you wish. So here's the media manager. It's going to turn the TV on, receiver on. It couldn't decide which HDMI input it is, so I'll go to my devices, receiver. A quick shortcut, if you actually type in keyboards like input, it'll actually scroll down and kind of, you can use keyboard shortcuts to kind of navigate wherever you want. Put that in HDMI 1. All right, so now we've done some very basic. We've modified the Blu-ray button. We've modified the media manager button however we see fit with our macros. But now we need to follow the rest of the macro. So the very first thing that happens when you press this button is the remote itself will change to page media manager. Or on the Blu-ray button, it'll change to page Blu-ray player. And to change the page, if you look up in the top left-hand corner, it says current page home. If I hit the drop down to the right, this will show me all the pages in Pro Control Studio. And pages work based upon the hard buttons on the left. So if you notice right now, you'll see some of the buttons on the remote. You have volume up, down, mute, on, off, and some buttons underneath the screen that kind of normally go down here. You'll see these have little green check marks on. Hopefully you guys' screens are big enough you can see those. Little green check marks, that means that they're programmed for something. So if I select the button, you'll see this button is programmed for change to previous screen. Or if I select the volume down, you'll see Yamaha receiver, volume down. But the rest of these buttons are unprogrammed. For the home page, now if I navigate to my Blu-ray player page, you'll see now all these heart buttons have little green check marks next to them. That means that for this page, for this Blu-ray player, everything's been pre-programmed for me. If I select the OK button, you'll see Blu-ray cursor enter. Now let's say I go to my cable TV page. You'll see now I select the OK, now it says set top box, cursor enter. So depending on which page I'm on, the hard buttons on the left and the screen in front of you will change. Now, the catch on this is that you have like volume up, down, like a receiver. These buttons that are green, it means they're global, or some programming language uses punch through to describe. So no matter what page I'm on in Pro Control Studio, the command will always remain the same. So if I select volume down, you'll still see Yamaha receiver volume down on the cable TV page. If I go to the Blu-ray player page, volume down, it's still Yamaha receiver volume down. So those will always stay the same regardless of what page you're on. And you can turn that functionality on or off by just simply right-clicking a button, uncheck make this key global. Now I can change this depending on what I want. Let's say for the Blu-ray player page, I actually want the volume to go through the TV. So I'll go for the TV, volume down. You'll see now the volume down button is Smart TV. I'm going to do the same thing for volume up. Uncheck make this key global. Remove the volume up. Add the TV. Volume up. Add that to the right. So there we go. Now we're on the Blu-ray player page. Volume up, volume down is going to be handled to the TV. But if I go to any other of my devices, cable TV, you'll still see volume up and volume down is still handled by the receiver. This is what you'd want to change for Zone 2 applications, or if you have like a sound bar and sometimes you want to use it and sometimes you don't, like for a night mode, you can do that as well. That's how we handle our punch throughs and globals, typically one of the questions that we get asked. Since I'm going here, I'm going to also save. Always save your system file. It's always a good idea. The system files are small. Even a large system file with like multiple iPads, you're looking at 12 megabytes max. Put them on a flash drive, back them up to a cloud, wherever you want to see it fit. Always save your system files. You can reuse them over and over again. Let's navigate back to the home page. One thing I'd also like to talk about, just briefly touch on, is placeholders. Placeholders are things that you can use to kind of modify the look and feel. So like when I added that Blu-ray player to the system file, it took a placeholder and turned it into a Blu-ray button. Those kind of just come and go. If you don't like them, they won't do anything when you actually download to the remote. You can just click them, hit delete on your keyboard, they're gone. You can also modify everything you see here. So you can kind of move buttons around. You can select multiple buttons. I'm just going to click and drag. And if you want to see, there's a few formatting options. At the very bottom of your screen, you'll just kind of have to play around with these. Typically, I do this when I'm done programming. You can align them top. You can distribute the buttons across. Just kind of make the programming look a little bit nicer. Again, you can do everything you want with these. Let's say I have some Apple images. I have a few that I've gleaned from various sources. Oops. Delete button background. I need to find an icon. Wow, I have a lot of buttons here. Drag that over. Oh, that looks bad. There we go. That's a little bit better. So we have different images. Just drag them to the screen. If you can kind of see, they kind of snap to the button and you release, then they let go. There's a couple different ways you can do that. But if you don't like our templates, you don't like the look, the theme, you can certainly grab everything on the screen and start completely from scratch if you wish. So you can design these however you want, put your company logo on there, brand it however you want for the customer. You can certainly do whatever you want for graphics-wise. All you got to do is hit the image folder and then redirect to wherever you have your images located on your computer. So very handy there as well. And of course, if you really screw up that bad, you can also hit the undo button at the top of your screen, and you can step back up to 30 steps. So if it does end up looking terrible and you didn't like what you did, just hit the giant undo or redo button. Remember, 30 steps is all you get on that one, though. Again, I'm going to hit save. When you are kind of happy with your program, you'll kind of have to play around and make sure everything works, and of course test the system before handing off to the customer and kind of add some buttons. But once you're all said and done, again, save. I'm going to go hit download at the top of my screen. It's going to build the program files, and I don't know if there's a few processors sitting around the network. If you select the device, you can just select and then hit download, or if you have the remote connected, let me actually just grab a remote here. Connect that, you'll see it pop up down below. You just select the device, and then you can just hit download to select a device. And that will download your program. Same thing with the processor. You select it, you download to the remote, it'll send the program in there. How fast this downloads all depends on the number of graphics and images and pages that you have within the system file. Generally, you're looking at about 20 seconds for a download, so it's not too terrible. On the short side, if you have a couple pages like we do here, you're looking at 10-15 seconds to download that. And that's good to go. And you'll see that the remote is now up to date. If I select the processor, here's some that are just residing on the network. I'm not going to download that because that's probably someone else's test, so I don't want to screw that up. But that's the download screen for you. And that's really kind of just a very brief overview of Pro Control Studio. You can kind of see where all the macros are. You can see where the properties are, the look and feel. You can move things around, adjust it however you see fit. There's all sorts of resources on our web page. Not only are there just kind of webinars, there's kind of just some quick tips. Of course, if you guys want additional training, you can contact me as well. We can do webinars, or you guys aren't local, so I can't just buzz over and say hi. But we can certainly do webinars, or if you want to see something done, feel free to shoot me an email wherever you wish. I can do that as well. But on our website, there's company forums, so you can log in and do the Pro Control forum thing. There's white sheets if you're a reader and not a visual type person. There's a couple of different sheets that kind of explain kind of common tips, just very useful stuff. In fact, let me show you. So once you do log in, you get this whole dealer link bar on procontrol.com. If you go to the Training Materials tab, you'll see these are the long webinars. These will basically guide you through programming an R series, programming a Z series. Then there's a whole bunch of just short videos, like how to do pages, screens, viewports, kind of explains that. Importing pages, syncing pages, using flags, button alignments. This is a big one, swapping IR codes. Just gives you more options for learning. Also, if you go to the technical bulletins, here's kind of the white sheets. Kind of if you don't like videos or the videos don't work for you, there's also some options here for different PDFs that we've done, kind of gathered together for you, good for having in the field. Then, of course, far right-hand side is the Downloads tab. That's where you actually get Pro Control Studio. We last updated this March 3rd, again, kind of once a quarter. You'll see the far left version number when it was released. Our company forums will actually have more information about when it was updated and things we found or bugs that we've done or additional features we've added. One thing to note, there are two downloads here. There is the Pro Control Studio at the top, the online installer, which will just download a small little file, and then it'll just pull down the information as you need from the internet. Or if you're going to save this to a USB drive or save it locally on a computer or transfer it, do the offline installer. This will download all the components of Pro Control Studio into just a simple file you can run locally on your computer. You don't have to be connected to the internet after the fact once you've already downloaded the offline installer. Of course, our software itself doesn't need to be connected to the internet once it's installed, and then you can kind of build from there. So Again, if you need to log in or register, just go to procontrol.com. Here's procontrol.com. Here is the register button. Simply fill out your information, submit registration, and then we'll approve you. Typical approval takes between 1 to 2 days, so plan accordingly. Of course, if you're stuck in a bind, you need to run out and grab something, or you need to program something in a bind, and you just don't have the software with you, we can certainly kind of shoot that through. If you shoot me an email or get a hold of customer service, we can certainly kind of push that through quicker if need be. But typically 1 to 2 days, depending on how fast your distributor responds. So, again, any questions?
Matt, we do have a couple questions.
All right.
So here are the first ones. What is the warranty on the handsets and the controllers?
The handsets, controllers, all Pro Control products are warranted direct replacement for 1 year.
Okay.
That's direct through your distributor. They can swap it out. There's no RMA, anything required from us.
Okay.
We do ask that you call tech support just because if there's like a known issue or something like that, we can take care of it a little bit faster. Just let us know if you found something or what's going on with it, and then we'll typically at that point tell you just to swap out your distributor. Anything past a year is kind of case-by-case basis. If there's something we know about, or if we're pretty lenient anyway, so it always, if you are past that year, reach out to us anyway, and we'll see what we can do, or we'll work with some options that we have available to you. So anything past a year, contact Pro Control RTI directly. Anything within a year is done at the distributor level. Of course, batteries are 90 days.
Okay, thanks for the clarification on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next one has to do with channel selection. You touched on it.
Correct.
Is it a best practice to have, if you have multiple processors in the same facility, do they also need to be separated, or should they be synced?
I would definitely wouldn't do the sync part. I would definitely keep them separate. Different system zone code, different channel. They are, although not supported, you could run them on the same channel system zone code, and there's some trickery stuff that you could do, although not supported. On the Z, no. The Z, that would cause all sorts of headaches that you wouldn't want to wish upon anyone.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering if you could set a button to basically, for example, like have one function to do if you just pressed it, and then have it do another function if you did, like, say, hold it for 2 or 3 seconds instead?
Yep. Unfortunately, Pro Control Studio does not have a press and hold feature. What we do have that's not really the same is called button pause. Typically, we use this for lighting control, like let's say a Lutron Caseta. They don't have a press state, so what we do, this is a bad example since I don't have one in here, but imagine this Smart TV CC was raise shade, and then we'd pause until button is released, and then when the button is released, then we'd say stop shade. That's about as far as we go as far as press and holds.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It doesn't look like we've got any more questions coming in. Please make a note to take down the information that's on the screen. Thank you for your time today. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar now. So everyone, thank you for your time today, and let us know if we can help you with any Pro Control related questions that you have. Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for your time today.